What if I told you that a single corporate decision could cripple American farming, drive up food prices, and leave thousands of farmers struggling to survive? It's happening right now because of one company's shocking move. And if this doesn't get stopped soon, the consequences could be devastating for all of us. For decades, American farmers have relied on one company to power their fields, drive their businesses, and sustain the nation's food supply. But now, that very company is turning its back on them, cutting off their ability to repair their own machines, outsourcing production, and pushing thousands into financial ruin. This is not just another corporate controversy. This is a war over control, independence, and survival. And today, we're breaking it all down. The key players, who's involved. In early 2024, a crisis began unfolding in the heart of American agriculture. Farmers, once the backbone of the nation's economy, are now fighting against a corporate giant that has dominated the industry for nearly 2 centuries. The conflict centers around one name: John Deere. John Deere, once a trusted ally, has shifted its focus from supporting farmers to maximizing profits at their expense. Thousands of farmers across the U.S. are now locked out of their own machinery, facing crippling costs and losses in the millions. Meanwhile, lawmakers are stepping in. But is it already too late? It all started when John Deere introduced software restrictions that prevent farmers from repairing their own equipment. The move forced them to rely on expensive authorized dealers, turning minor fixes into costly, time-consuming nightmares. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. Deere has now escalated the situation even further, making one of the boldest moves in the company's history, one that could change American farming forever. The ripple effect. The chain reactions begin. At first, this seemed like a simple corporate policy shift, something that might cause frustration but wouldn't shake the industry. But that was a massive miscalculation. Here's what happened next. Farmers were left powerless. Tractors, harvesters, and other essential equipment became impossible to repair without official John Deere authorization. Delays of weeks or months during crucial planting and harvesting seasons caused massive losses. Costs skyrocketed. Repairs that once cost a few $100s suddenly jumped into the thousands. Or worse, became completely unfixable without dealership approval. Farmers who couldn't afford the delays were forced to abandon fields or take on more debt. John Deere doubled down by outsourcing jobs to Mexico. Instead of fixing the issue, John Deere laid off thousands of American workers and moved major production to Mexico. This wasn't just an economic decision, it was a direct hit to American farming towns that depended on those jobs. And the most shocking part? John Deere isn't backing down. Instead, they've pushed even harder, making it clear that this isn't just about farming. It's about power, monopolies, and the future of an industry. So what does this all mean? Let's break down the 5 biggest consequences of this crisis. 5. The right to repair war. Who really owns your equipment? Farmers used to fix their own machines. Now, they're completely locked out. John Deere's software prevents any unauthorized repairs, forcing farmers into high-cost service contracts. Some desperate farmers are even hacking their own tractors, risking lawsuits just to keep working. For generations, farmers prided themselves on their ability to maintain and repair their equipment. That independence is now gone, replaced by a system designed to trap them into expensive, long-term service contracts. 4. Outsourcing disaster. American jobs shipped overseas. John Deere has started shutting down U.S. factories and moving production to Mexico. Thousands of workers have been laid off, devastating rural towns that depended on manufacturing jobs to survive. American-made equipment is disappearing, replaced by foreign production that doesn't support local economies. The loss of jobs doesn't just affect factory workers, it ripples through entire communities, closing down small businesses, restaurants, and service providers that once thrived on the industry. 3. The supply chain collapse, delays, and equipment shortages. The right to repair battle has created massive shortages in farming equipment. Farmers who can't fix their machines are being forced to wait months for repairs. Entire harvest seasons are being lost due to delays, pushing food prices higher and threatening supply chains across the country. The inability to access quick repairs isn't just an inconvenience, it's a direct hit to national food security. With farming already under strain from unpredictable weather and global market fluctuations, these delays could be the breaking point. 2. Corporate monopoly. The fight against the farming giant. Farmers are banding together to fight back, but John Deere isn't budging. Lawsuits and government investigations are now underway, but Deere is using every legal loophole to maintain control. Some lawmakers are stepping in, pushing for regulations that would force companies to allow independent repairs. But will these efforts come in time? Or has John Deere already built an industry so dependent on its technology that reversing course is impossible? 1. Your wallet under siege. How this hits consumers hardest. This isn't just a farming issue, it's an economic disaster waiting to happen. Food prices are already rising, and if this crisis continues, expect grocery costs to surge even higher. As fewer farmers can afford to stay in business, the nation's food supply is at risk. This isn't just about the farmers, it's about everyone who depends on them. And that means every single American. So what does this mean for you? Expect higher grocery bills as supply chain disruptions drive up food prices. American jobs are disappearing, with rural communities being hit the hardest. If this crisis doesn't get solved soon, the cost of meat, grains, and produce will skyrocket, putting more pressure on families nationwide. And the worst part? This is just the beginning. As farmers continue to fight back, the battle over who controls American agriculture is about to escalate into a full-blown economic war. What do you think? Do you think John Deere's power grab will backfire? Or is this the new reality for American farming? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to stay ahead of the biggest economic shifts happening right now, hit that subscribe button, because we break these issues down so you can stay informed and prepared. The silent takeover of farming. For generations, American farmers prided themselves on one thing: self-reliance. When something broke, they fixed it. When conditions changed, they adapted. Farming was built on ingenuity, problem-solving, and the ability to overcome whatever challenge came next. But today, that independence is being ripped away. Not by the weather, not by the market, but by the very companies that make their equipment. At the heart of this fight is a question that should have a simple answer. If you buy something, do you truly own it? For farmers using John Deere equipment, the answer is no. Tractors, harvesters, and precision farming tools have become locked machines controlled by proprietary software. That means a simple repair, a job that once took an afternoon in the barn, is now impossible without a John Deere technician, a corporate-approved repair, and a hefty bill. And if the software says the machine can't run, the farmer is out of luck. It's not just an inconvenience, it's an existential threat. Because when farmers can't fix their own equipment, they lose time, they lose money, and eventually, they lose their farms. A broken system by design. John Deere and other manufacturers argue that software locks protect their intellectual property and prevent tampering. But the reality is far simpler. Control. Repairs that should cost a few $100s now cost thousands. Tractors that used to run for decades are now obsolete within years. Farmers are trapped, forced to rely on authorized service centers or risk voiding their warranties. The effect? A corporate chokehold on American agriculture. And it's not just repairs, even preventative maintenance is affected. Farmers can no longer update or optimize their own machines. They have to wait for approved software patches that roll out on John Deere's schedule, not the farmers. And when that update costs thousands, the message is clear. The farmer isn't in control anymore. The manufacturer is. This isn't just about machines, it's about who holds power in the industry that feeds America. And for farmers, the breaking point is here. The farmer uprising, taking back control. When farmers realized they were locked out of their own equipment, they didn't stay silent. Across America, the right to repair movement has exploded, driven by farmers, mechanics, and rural business owners demanding a fundamental right, the ability to fix what they own. At first, it was a grassroots effort, local meetings, petitions, and letters to state legislators, but soon it became something bigger. Lawsuits were filed challenging John Deere's restrictive practices. State legislatures introduced right to repair bills, demanding fair access to tools and software. Farmers took to the internet, exposing how broken the system had become. Their stories went viral. One farmer in Nebraska spent weeks waiting for a John Deere technician to reset a simple software lock that should have taken minutes to fix. The delay cost him his entire planting season. Another in Iowa was forced to pay over $5,000 just to replace a $300 sensor simply because the software wouldn't allow him to do it himself. These stories were everywhere, and they caught the attention of lawmakers. The political battle over farming's future. What started as a fight over repairs quickly turned into a national political battle. State governments took action. Colorado became the first state to pass a right-to-repair law for farm equipment. More than 20 other states introduced similar bills, forcing manufacturers to provide access to parts and software. But corporate giants weren't going down without a fight. John Deere spent millions lobbying against these bills, arguing that allowing farmers to fix their own machines would lead to safety risks and unauthorized modifications. They even signed agreements with farming organizations promising some repair access. But when farmers read the fine print, it was clear. Nothing was really changing. Congress stepped in. A federal right to repair bill is now being debated in Washington, one that could set a nationwide precedent for all industries, not just farming. Because this fight isn't just about tractors. It's about cars, phones, appliances, and even medical devices. If John Deere wins, other industries will follow, creating a future where no one truly owns anything they buy. But if farmers win, it could trigger one of the biggest shifts in consumer rights in modern history. The stakes have never been higher. This battle isn't just about money, convenience, or even fairness. It's about the survival of America's independent farmers. When a machine breaks, time is everything. If farmers can't get their equipment running, they lose their crops, their income, and their livelihoods. And when small farms disappear, rural America disappears with them. Right now, the fight for repair freedom is at a turning point. Will the farmers win their battle for independence, or will corporations keep control, forcing America's farmers to operate on their terms? The answer affects every single one of us, because when farmers lose control, we all pay the price. What do you think? Do you believe farmers should have the right to repair their own equipment, or do manufacturers have a point about keeping control over their technology? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if you want to stay updated on the biggest economic and industrial battles shaping America, hit that subscribe button now, because this fight isn't over, and neither are the consequences. The death of the small farm, how America is losing its heartland. For more than a century, small farms were the backbone of America. They weren't just businesses, they were a way of life, a tradition passed down through generations. These were the farms that fed America, sustained rural communities, and kept the country's economy balanced between industrial powerhouses and agricultural stability. But today, that legacy is vanishing at an alarming rate. Since the 1980s, America has lost over 50% of its small farms. The average farm income is now at its lowest point in decades. For every new farm that opens, dozens are shutting down. And the reason? It's not just bad weather, global competition, or changing diets. It's a financial system that has become rigged against small farmers. From corporate monopolies controlling equipment and seeds to government policies favoring industrial agriculture over local farmers, the small family farm is being squeezed out of existence. The result? Massive debt, abandoned land, and rural communities struggling to survive. And here's the harsh reality. Once small farms disappear, they don't come back. How John Deere's policies are making it worse. We've already seen how repair restrictions trap farmers in an endless cycle of expensive breakdowns and service delays. But that's just one piece of the puzzle. Farmers are also battling skyrocketing equipment costs, shrinking crop prices, and unfair contracts that leave them with less control and fewer profits. Tractors that once cost $50,000 now cost over $500,000. Maintenance fees have increased by more than 200% in the past decade. Farmers now spend more on equipment than they earn in a year. Many are forced to take out massive loans just to stay in business. And here's the worst part. Banks aren't lending like they used to. With interest rates rising and profits falling, lenders see small farms as too risky. They'd rather finance large corporate farms, which means independent farmers are left without a safety net. If a single bad season wipes out their crops, they lose everything. It's a cycle that's playing out across the country, one that's pushing small farmers to the brink of collapse. And when they fail, the entire rural economy crumbles with them. Rural America on life support, the collapse of small towns. What happens when the farms disappear? A farm isn't just a farm, it's a pillar of the community. When a family farm shuts down, it doesn't just affect that one family. It sends shockwaves through the entire local economy. Think about it. The farmer buys seeds, fertilizer, and fuel from local suppliers. They sell crops to local grain elevators and co-ops. They hire mechanics, electricians, and seasonal workers. Their income supports schools, grocery stores, and hardware shops. So what happens when that farm goes under? Those businesses start failing too. A single failed farm can mean a closed feed store that's been open for generations, a family-owned diner with fewer customers, a mechanic shop that can't stay in business. And over time, the entire town starts shrinking. Schools shut down, hospitals lose funding, young people leave looking for work elsewhere. Before long, what was once a thriving community is nothing more than a ghost town. And here's the terrifying part. This is happening everywhere. The corporate takeover of farmland. When small farmers lose their land, who steps in to buy it? Not other local families, corporate agribusinesses, hedge funds, foreign investors, and they're buying up millions of acres at a pace never seen before. Foreign companies now own more than 40 million acres of U.S. farmland. Private investment firms are turning farmland into corporate assets. The number of family-owned farms is at an all-time low. What does this mean for the average American? Less food security, higher prices, less control over what we eat. When massive corporations own the land, their priority isn't local communities, it's maximizing profits. That means cheaper, lower quality crops, more reliance on foreign supply chains, fewer jobs in rural America. And as farmland falls into the hands of investment groups, America's food system becomes more vulnerable than ever. Because when profit is the only priority, farmers and consumers always lose. A crisis that affects every American. If you live in a city or suburb, you might think this problem doesn't affect you. But here's the truth, it does. Everything from the cost of groceries to the quality of your food is impacted by what's happening to rural America. The price of meat, dairy, and produce keeps rising. Food shortages are becoming more frequent. Supply chain disruptions mean more reliance on imports. And when rural economies collapse, it puts more pressure on urban centers. More unemployment, higher housing costs, increased government dependency. The destruction of small farms isn't just a rural issue, it's an economic disaster for the entire country. And unless something changes, America's independent farmers could become a thing of the past. What do you think? Is the destruction of small farms a natural shift, or is it being engineered by corporate greed? Are we witnessing the end of rural America, or can it still be saved? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, and if you want the latest updates on the biggest economic battles shaping our country, hit that subscribe button now, because this crisis isn't slowing down, and neither are the consequences. The future of farming. Can it be saved? For generations, farming was built on self-reliance. The farmer was not just a producer, but a mechanic, a businessman, and a problem solver. When something broke down, they fixed it. When prices dropped, they adapted. They didn't wait on corporations or politicians to dictate their future. But today, that independence is under attack. John Deere's grip on repair services is just one piece of a much larger problem. Farmers aren't just fighting for the right to fix their tractors, they're fighting for survival in an industry that is becoming increasingly controlled by corporations, technology, and global markets. But here's the thing about farmers, they don't go down without a fight. Across the country, a movement is building, one that's pushing back against monopolies, embracing new strategies, and redefining the future of agriculture. Fighting back, how farmers are taking control. In small towns and rural communities, farmers are organizing like never before. The Right to Repair movement has become the rallying cry, bringing together independent farmers, mechanics, and lawmakers who see the danger of corporate control. For years, farmers were forced to rely on John Deere's authorized dealerships for repairs, waiting weeks for service and paying thousands for simple fixes. But now that's changing. Colorado was the first state to pass a right to repair law for agricultural equipment in 2023, and more states are following suit. This is bigger than just tractors. It's about who has control over their own equipment and business. Right to repair laws don't just cut costs, they restore a level of independence that was stolen from farmers by corporations that saw an opportunity to squeeze them for every last dollar. But laws alone won't fix the problem. That's why farmers are also looking for alternatives. Brands that don't lock them out of their own machines, manufacturers that value function over monopoly control. Smaller companies like Kubota, AGCO, and New Holland are gaining traction, offering repair-friendly designs that put power back in the hands of the people using them. Meanwhile, open-source farming technology is on the rise. Engineers and farmers alike are designing tractors that don't rely on proprietary software, sharing blueprints online, and even using 3D printing to manufacture replacement parts themselves. And then there are the boldest moves, farmers completely ditching corporate machinery altogether. Across the Midwest, some farmers are going back to refurbishing decades-old tractors, models from the 1970s and 80s that don't rely on software and digital locks. It might not be the latest technology, but it's something they can own, fix, and depend on. This is a quiet rebellion, but one that's growing every day, because farmers aren't just up against corporate greed, they're up against a changing world, and how they respond will determine the future of American agriculture. The new era of farming. What comes next? The farming industry is at a crossroads. While some are fighting for independence, others are embracing the high-tech future of agriculture. Automation is no longer science fiction. Across America, large farms are already using self-driving tractors, AI-powered drones, and robotic harvesters to replace human labor. It's efficient, it's productive, but it's also expensive and inaccessible to smaller farms that can't afford million-dollar technology. This shift is creating a divide. The farms that can afford to automate will thrive, while the ones that can't may struggle to survive. The push toward automation is driven by more than just profit. Labor shortages are forcing many farms to find alternatives to hiring workers, especially as immigration policies tighten and fewer people are willing to work long hours in the fields. But not everyone is convinced this is the right path. Some farmers are pushing back against the idea that agriculture should become completely mechanized and controlled by AI. They argue that farming isn't just about efficiency, it's about sustainability, about producing food that isn't dependent on massive energy consumption and corporate-controlled software. That's why another movement is growing in parallel: regenerative agriculture. Instead of relying on industrial-scale automation, regenerative farming focuses on improving soil health, reducing dependency on chemical fertilizers, and creating self-sustaining farm ecosystems. It's not about going backwards, it's about moving forward in a way that protects farmland for future generations. Many smaller farms see this as the only viable alternative to corporate control. By focusing on direct-to-consumer sales, local markets, and more diversified crops, they can bypass the corporate food system altogether. For decades, industrial farming has relied on cheap fuel, global trade, and endless supplies of fertilizers and pesticides. But what happens when those systems break down? What happens if fuel prices spike? What happens if trade wars disrupt global supply chains? What happens when the soil is too degraded to produce food? That's the real crisis looming over the future of agriculture, and that's why many farmers believe that regenerative farming is the only way forward. So where does this all lead? The fight for the future of farming isn't just happening in the fields, it's happening in courtrooms, in state legislatures, and in global markets. Right now, corporations like John Deere still have the upper hand. They still control the most advanced equipment. They still dominate repair services. They still influence policy through lobbying and backdoor deals. But they are losing ground. Farmers are finding ways to work around corporate restrictions. Legislators are passing laws to break monopolies. Innovators are building open-source alternatives to locked-down machines. Regenerative farming is proving that a more sustainable future is possible. The question now is, which path will win? Will farming become a fully automated, corporate-controlled industry where small farms disappear? Or will farmers reclaim their independence through new laws, new competition, and new farming methods? That's what's being decided right now. Because at the end of the day, this isn't just about farmers, it's about the entire food system. It's about whether people will have control over the food they grow, the food they eat, and the economy that supports them. And that's why this fight matters to all of us. What do you think? Do you believe farmers can take back control, or are we heading toward a corporate-dominated food system? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to stay ahead of the biggest economic battles shaping America, hit that subscribe button now. Because this fight, it's just getting started.